You're listening to Raiding the Fringe with Poda, Ostinius, Nepids, and Dr. Lee. From ancient civilizations to the cutting edge of science, from exploring the outer reaches of space to the Atlantean depths, we discuss the topics of the unknown and the possibilities of the bizarre. Are you hungry to expand your horizons? Come get your fill as we raid the fringe.
Hello, all you fringe raiders.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that. Joining me as always today is my good friend Poda,
Sup?
Nep,
Good evening.
and Dr. Lee.
In the house.
And I am always Ostinius. Today, our topic is going to be time travel. I don't want to say the space-time continuum. We're more focusing on time, not necessarily space, unless somebody has something interesting to say about that.
And I do.
Oh, okay. Then Lee just volunteered himself to kick tonight off.
I love time travel. I love all of the theories involved, the different aspects, and the rules that each theory can imply as to how it works and everything. We were talking about space-time. One method of traveling through time. In another episode, we were talking about dimensions and how there's a theory that you are allowed to move throughout your dimensions, and if you aren't moving through the three current dimensions that we know, the fourth dimension, time, you could travel outside of this current embodiment of the universe, travel down this time dimension back and forth, and then pop back into the dimensions that we know. And so we would see it as time travel, but in this extra dimension where time doesn't exactly exist, you slide up and down time as if it's a distance.
That almost sounds like it's trans-dimensional. Like, that's in between dimensions that you could shift. If time is fluent and then you're jumping from one dimension to another.
As in time was a dimension, not in between dimensions. So you traveled the time dimension left or right. It's like going up and down a timeline.
Nepitz, is that what you were trying to go for?
Yeah, I was just going to say, he said time is a dimension instead of time in a dimension.
Okay.
Yeah. So whereas we're locked in going 1 second at a time, I'm a time traveler. I move 1 second at a rate of 1 second, forward through time only. But if you could remove yourselves from the lock and go through the time dimension itself, you can move backwards or forwards.
That is very interesting. Let me pose this question. A person had the ability to shift along to the dimension of time. Would you be only affecting your own timeline, or would they be able to surpass a timeline of their own? Like, they can go before their birth or after their supposed death.
Oh, so
Is
it's
that
not
a possibility?
it's not like Quantum Leap, where in Quantum Leap they believe that you were only allowed to go within your own lifetime.
I'm asking you that
leap
question.
was the last time. Oh boy.
The last time will be the leap home.
Well, my time traveling experience is rather limited. I haven't done a lot of time traveling myself,
You
so all
haven't?
we've got to go off.
No,
of
you're
is
supposing
theories.
a theory. Yeah, you're supposing a theory. So in this theory, what do you say? Do you believe that one could surpass their own timeline to...
I would say going off of that, yes. Just like, something can be created and then exist throughout its own period. If it shifts and moves, it could go back before the part where it was technically created.
But from that point on, it would not exist.
If it slipped back out of the timeline again, it wouldn't exist anymore.
Poda, you look like you are intrigued.
If you are the being that is living in that dimension of time and able to go left or right, which would be back and forth in our sense of time, would you age at all, or are you seemingly old and young, or what kind of entity could exist in a dimension such as time, as the way you put it?
That's an interesting question. He was just mentioning the fact that it would be a thing, and I was asking a personal question. We're talking about entities? Do you...
Actually, I could directly tie this all together.
Oh, okay.
The answer that I've got for you relates to a lot of Einstein's theory on relativity and the speed of light, where he believed that as two objects traveling the speed of light travel towards each other, they are still only approaching each other at the speed of light because time slows down, and making time relative For a person traveling through time, whether it's through another dimension or whether it's through a gate or whatever, for you, time will remain constant. You could travel 100 years in the future. You're not aging 100 years. You're traveling. We're not talking about just living the 100 years. It's moving forward. So you will get to see the events 150 years in the future, but you only had to live 50 years of it. You're still 50 years older, not 150 years older. So time for you is constant and will still stay the same because of the physics applied to your body. But as you're traveling through time, it's a matter of perspective. To the universe, you've moved throughout time. Mm-hmm. But to you, it's still your lifespan. You will only know your 80 years, 100 years, however long you live. It's just which snippets of time would you like to observe with that time that you've got?
So living in that dimension, your awareness of time would be coinciding with the time of the 3 other dimensions that you're entering into.
By this theory, you already are living in that time. We are traveling along it at a constant. We just have no way of altering the speed or direction that we travel that dimension because we are currently occupied with the 3 dimensions that we all know and love. If you were to be able to remove yourself from one of the current dimensions, kind of slide yourself over into the other slot, then you're still here and you still live, but it would be at a different rate and a different movement than the rest of us.
Okay.
All right. Net, why don't you lay down some time travel theories on us?
I don't really have any theories, but I mean, you got like the Nazis that actually created a time machine.
How did that work out? Do you want to describe the experiment?
I don't really know exactly the experiment, but assuming that it worked out well because the people involved were no longer here.
Godspeed,
you all.
Yeah, they made a time machine to go back and kill Hitler, but they made it look like a suicide.
No. Why would the Nazis want to kill Hitler?
Yeah, they did that to themselves. Don't
No,
tell
like-
Hitler.
Why would they want to kill Hitler? How about because he wasn't Aryan? And they finally caught on.
Well, hey, you know what? That's a good point.
No, like
Oh, what was the guy thinking?
I don't really have any time travel theories in per se.
Do you believe in time travel? Yes or no?
No.
Could you see aspects of time travel in a fantasy setting?
Yes.
If said fantasy requirements were met by you, what would you do with said powers of time travel?
Kill Hitler.
Let's simplify it.
Yeah, let's not talk about Hitler.
If you could travel through time, what would you do?
Well, first off, do you have stipulations for even if it were possible, it would have to have this outline and this outline? Or, do you want to just go footloose and fancy free? I'm going to dance with a dinosaur.
Well, I should have thought about all this stuff beforehand. I was just going to go off you guys. I think it just depends on what the fantasy is. It's whoever's telling the story. If I completely don't believe in time travel, then we're going off of fantasy aspects. So therefore, I have to figure out what the fantasy is. So just like that time machine book, Jules Verne?
H.G. Wells?
Oh, no.
No. Was it Jules Verne?
I don't know.
Ooh, it was Jules Verne. Was it H.G. Wells? It was.
Ooh, I
Jules-
think it might be H.G. Wells.
I'm looking it up now.
Hold on 1 minute while we Google.
Power of the internet.
I know it was not Ray Bradbury.
No, it wasn't Ray Bradbury.
It's like saying, that wasn't Stephen
Now
King.
you see the thing is there are many books with many stories while I was looking this up that have their own set of rules.
H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells.
You win this round, Highlander.
But each of these books and each of these stories has their own set of rules for how time travel works. My problem is in the loopholes that they self-create.
The paradoxes.
Well, that just makes it because it's lazy writing. They could just do whatever they want, and it's a dream sequence.
But let's hear your piece on this.
Going into what they were just saying, and with Lee just saying that, the grandfather paradox, I think they call it, which is basically the paradox that shows up in the Terminator movies, where you are your own grandfather, or if you killed your grandfather, would you ever be born?
See, now that one always intrigues me because that right there is the crux of all time travel theories, one way or another, whether they talk about it directly or indirectly. That is what should govern your time travel rules. So you've got the fact where you have traveled back in time to kill the man who was going to kill your mom. so that way she can live and give birth to you so that you can go back and kill the guy. But if you never did you or didn't you? And it gets really confusing, and it makes a lot of people's brains explode. And there are a couple of concrete directions that I've found that can explain it and remove paradoxes from the equation altogether. Because I don't believe in paradox.
Are you talking about the stupid stuff of don't ever run into your alternate self?
Like Time Cop, where if you
never
touch
give
your
yourself
past,
a high five. Yeah.
you touch yourself in the past, they both disappear. That's just kooky. So I guess
So you think your past self could meet your future self and give each other a hug? Good old, come here, buddy. This is never gonna matter.
Well, before we branch off to that, I just want to say that the scenario where you're talking about to be your own grandfather, I don't believe that can create a paradox because I don't believe in paradox. I believe that the only time we see paradox, it is the inability of us to fully explain what happened with the differences. So, you've got one of two options, as the way I see it, is either you went back in time to be your own grandfather. That is the timeline as it exists. It could never have not happened. And so there is no paradox because it always was that you were the one that incepted yourself. It's hard to conceive because we're used to linear time travel, but...
No, actually, you just totally blew the top of my whole... That was my end game. I believe that there cannot be a paradox. I don't think that you could do anything because no matter what you do, it is part of the timeline that you're in forever.
Right, so to whatever you went back in time to do, you did, and it happened.
And then it led you to this point, and then in the future, you're going to try to change it because you didn't like the way it happened. Then you go into the future, and you fuck it up some way, and then something happened, but it's the same thing that happened when you were young, and now you get older, and then you're going to try to fix it, and then you go back, and it fucks up the same way, and you're stuck in this crazy time loop.
Yes, exactly.
I'm with you. That's what I think.
That's one concrete theory that I found. I challenge you to find a hole in that.
If time travel were possible.
If time travel were possible.
That's what I totally believe would happen.
Because going back in time and changing something, you're actually going back in time and making it happen in the first place, whether or not it gave you a cause to do it. And free will or not, that's how things happened.
That is time. It happened before.
And you
are making it happen at your time period, which is juxtaposed to the past.
Manifest destiny.
Your future. Yeah. Self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing.
So, then the second option of that is that anything you do to when you go through time to change something in time, and it creates this alternate timeline, it is the new timeline that you know of, and anytime you travel back to the future, you are following that path. You can't go back to your original. It kind of crosses over into one of those dimension talks we had again, where if you went back to time to change something, if you travel back to the present, you can either travel back to the present where you never went back and changed things, or you can travel into the present where things were changed, depending on which fork you took back to the future or whatever. So you can't create a paradox. You can't go back and prevent something from happening, because what that does is it kind of, if you think of like a slinky from the side view, you got that coil where that's your loop, going back in time, riding it forward, going back in time, riding it forward, but you're sliding sideways down the dimensional possibilities. So even when you go forward, you're following that spiral around, and you're going forward to the next forward, not the one that currently happened.
Right.
So instead of...
Well, not the one that originally happened.
Right, not the one that originally happened.
Right.
So instead of creating a paradox, what you're doing is you're creating an alternate option when you travel back into the future.
Creating an alternate universe.
So say you had a peach in your hand and you throw it at someone, and they grab that peach and then travel with you back in time, hand you the peach so you could throw it at someone, and it's the same peach being passed back and forth. That peach will age and get more rotten until eventually you're throwing a rotten fruit at yourself.
So the fruit itself has its own time that it travels with.
That's the thing, is the fruit would be traveling the spiral. Even though you only looped once, you're kind of like passing it off to the next chain in the spiral.
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, if the fruit's traveling with you, wouldn't it age the same as you?
It's not constantly traveling. You're throwing it at your past self, and then going into the future, you're throwing it at the next past you.
But you only do that 2 times. And then the
So
fruit.
as far as you know, you get hit with a fruit, and then you throw a fruit, and you're done with the fruit, and the fruit's gone.
But you get past the fruit, and then you throw the fruit.
And as far as your timeline's concerned, that fruit stopped existing because the loop is over for the fruit. But it wasn't a
Well,
loop.
no, because after you threw the fruit, you had to go back in time to hand yourself a fruit.
So wouldn't the
And
fruit
that's
be
where it could end.
stuck?
So the fruit travels in a spiral down the different possibilities
Okay,
instead of a loop.
But don't you take the fruit with you back
No,
in
it's still a
time
loop.
to throw it?
The next possibility you takes it back in time.
Yeah.
And
but-
then the following possibility you takes it back
No,
in time.
I
So it's
see
not
where that's
you.
going.
Yeah, but you, the next possibility, you yourself, is in the time machine with the peach.
Instead of you the
Yeah.
first time around.
So wouldn't that peach that you traded off still be traveling in time?
Yes,
So wouldn't it age the same as the people traveling?
it would, except the same you isn't traveling. You're not traveling with the
What
peach
does
the
you
entire
have to
time.
do with the peach?
Yeah. Now, what Nep's saying, okay, so you're there, and you get handed a peach, and you chuck this peach at yourself. So, okay, well, the first time you stand there, you get hit with a peach. You pick up the peach, and you get into a time machine, and then you go to the next part where then you're there, and you hit yourself with the peach, and then he picks up the peach. That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
The first loop, that first peach that ever gets thrown, is going to
Get caught in the loop forever.
But
cycled.
how would you know that's
Yeah,
the
but
first
how-
one if you got hit with the peach?
Because you get handed the peach.
Yeah, I still get that part that you're saying, but what
It's
I'm
not.
saying is, okay, what I'm saying is that peach is still traveling through time,
Yes.
and things that go so fast age differently.
No. The peach.
Isn't that what you said earlier? I believe.
What I'm saying
He's
is
talking about a different theory.
the amount of time that it takes you to travel back in time and throw it is a little slice of time. Say it takes 3 minutes. You hit, you go back in time, and you throw it. That whole thing. If you videoed that, you watched someone do this, then you've got 3 minutes of video.
Okay.
Okay, that peach is now 3 minutes older.
So,
So are you.
okay.
Your time travel is done. You've done your job and you hit that guy with the peach.
Okay.
And now you're going to continue to live your life while that guy grabs the peach and goes back in time.
Yeah.
He throws it at the guy, back of the guy's head.
Mm-hmm.
His time traveling days are done. He's going to go and live his life.
No.
Even though it's all those he's are still you.
Yeah, but when you get hit by the peach, you pick it up, you go into the time machine, you've already started that loop.
Exactly. But
So when you get hit by a peach, you don't just walk along your day. You pick up that peach, you get in a time machine, and now you're in this.
I'm confusing you.
I'm not confused at all. I'm just saying you're wrong.
I throw a peach at the back of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me 2.0
Uh-huh.
picks up the peach, travels back in time, throws it at me 3.0.
So,
Me 2.0 is not going to time travel again, but me 3.0 picks up the torch and decides that he's doing the time travel. So me 3.0 goes back in time, throws the peach at me 4.
I see what you're saying.
So there is a perceived loop there because at any point in time, what you see is a version of me throwing a peach at a version of me and then disappearing back to go back in time.
Yeah,
and
but
that's the loop.
Yeah, but the peach is only going to be as old as that loop. And that
so are we basically arguing the different, like, okay, so now I'm mainly talking about the peach, and you're mainly talking about the age of the person walking.
Well, I'm telling you
Well, I mean, yeah.
the difference between the two because
So one wouldn't age, but the other thing would.
Yes, from the perspective of the peach.
yeah.
Okay, there we go.
It would get more bruised and it would age.
Why do we use a peach?
But it'd
Why don't
be
we
a
use
small-
a rock?
Because
You'd be dead.
That then Chuck hit you with the rock, you're dead. How did I even exist?
Now, not everybody that's been hit with a rock dies.
with a peach, it's more evident. That's,
Yeah.
that's why I was
Depends on
using
how
an
hard you
example.
So
Chuck
we're
in this
arguing the
basket.
age of the individual, the
No.
peach or the person, not just them together.
So which
is the
came
biggest problem.
first, the peach or the egg?
What I'm saying is, at any part during this, it's a spiral instead of a loop. So at any point, as far as you know, I show up, throw a rotten peach at me, and disappear. And to you, that is the loop. It's always been a rotten peach. But it hasn't. To a previous iteration, which would wind up either being
Yeah.
a different dimension or a different timeline, however you want
But
to think of
that
that.
could teeter off because as you get hit with this rotten peach, you're not going to want to try to pick it up to go back in time to throw it again. It'll have.
And so it eventually, the spiral will end, but it does not create a paradox.
I'm totally with you.
Because it's not a loop anymore, it's a spiral.
I like that. I like that, but I like that.
When you look at a spiral from the side,
Yes.
it looks like a circle.
Yes.
But when you pull it apart to its different
It's like
spots,
a spring. Yeah.
it's a back and forth.
I'm with you. I understand that. But I believe, given your paradox discussion, that there would be a paradox because you would never be able to, none of you would be aware of when it started to make it a loop because it would already have been a part of the time.
But eventually it peters off because
The loop-
the second part will stop before the first part. And then the first part will peter off because of the second part.
Right, but he's talking about the beginning, not the end. And the spiral can start, but it won't start with a loop. To whoever started it, it won't look like a loop at all. It'll just look like I decided to go back in time with a peach. Not that I was hit with it. So there would have to
No,
be a
that's-
starting point.
Oh, yeah.
But if you were observing a loop, that means you aren't at the beginning of it. And if you're not observing a loop, you're watching someone go back in time, you're seeing the person that started the spiral, and you just don't get to see the effects of the spiral.
So eventually,
Cool.
you'll decide not to even pick up that peach and just walk away.
Yeah.
Thus breaking the cycle.
Got it.
So there is no paradox because you are
Not
not
cycle,
going back and
spiral.
changing yourself. You're going back and changing an alternate possibility.
It is not cyclical.
Correct. Well, cyclical
To
by
a
definition it is.
Cylindrical.
Cylindrical and
Lisa,
circular.
it's not the first time that's happened to me.
It's
Today.
a spirograph.
Now,
So-
in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, no, not that one. The other one he wrote, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. They had time travel, and they explained paradoxes as in, oh, it doesn't matter. The universe heals like a bruise, and everybody just remembers the reality that is most convenient for them.
Yep.
Nep, why don't you go ahead and enlighten us on some more?
Well, I mean, the question stated, that we all think is, do we actually have the materials and ability as humans to create a time machine? Some people think yes, and some people think no. In my opinion, I really don't think we have the technology to do so because we don't even understand our own plane of existence in front of us sometimes.
I would agree with that.
So if you can't explain why everything spirals in a certain way, how nature is, and we don't even understand our physical plane, how are we going to be able to travel back to another physical plane that we had no existence in?
That's true. We have so much trivial minutia that explains everything
Definition.
that we are already experiencing.
Country of origin. What is
Yeah.
that? No, what is that?
Minutia.
What's that word?
Minutia?
Yeah. Sounds like manure.
It's like a multitude
Tiny
of
little
stigma.
details
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
that shouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but so many meticulous little details
Yeah.
of ordinary things that we can't explain.
An
that
amalgamation of nuggets.
we will never, I don't think we will ever accomplish time travel
And
in
if you
real
think
life.
about it, like, we would have to know even more than that to be able to travel to another time period. Like,
Oh, especially if you're
know-
picking the time period.
Yeah, if you're picking.
Yeah, you
if it's
gotta
not
be
just
able
like
to
hit a
pinpoint that
button.
shit.
Oh, are we going forward, backwards? 5 seconds?
Yeah, I'm about to find out. Get to it.
One thing that gets me too is when you travel through time, you have to travel through space as well because this planet is spinning and
true.
it's going around
Yeah.
a sun, and the sun is going around in the galaxy, and the galaxy is fleeing away from the
Think
center of
the
the universe.
mathematics
And we
needed if you
can't
built a
even
machine.
get a robot on Mars sometimes right.
Right.
So if you want to put your own life in the thing, it's like, I'm time traveling, poof, and you're on like,
You're
tra-
in the vacuum of space.
Yeah. 1
Big
second in the
silent
future,
The last thought.
and
Or a
the
comet
Earth is
hits you.
70 billion miles that way.
better try again. So what was another point you were saying, Poda?
How gravity affects space and time.
How?
I don't know.
Well,
How does gravity affect space and
It
time?
suspects
no,
it.
it suspects it. There's a twinkle in the back of the Earth's eye.
That would be a terrifying thought if the Earth had a giant eyeball. A mouth would be scarier, though.
So anyway, Earth gravity affecting space time. I mean, I think that goes into what we were just saying, you can't travel time without space, right?
And the sun moves
Well-
too, so how do you even know you're going to be in the solar system at the same time?
Right, and you wouldn't be. But as far as theory of how gravity affects time, there is a theory that gravity does create a temporal distortion, and the greater the gravity, the more time distorts itself. And that leads to a lot of theories with scientists and black holes, to where the spaghettification, when you get close enough and it throws you through
To the singularity.
to the singularity, that because it will bend time as such, that makes it possible to go through time travel. However, I do have to say that there were a lot of recent studies on black holes that have disproven that very fact, that even though it may have an apparent distortion of time, most current scientific theories, from what I understand, are actually venturing away from that theory.
So are you saying that if we go fast enough, we can go into the future?
When I was little, that's what I
Superman.
thought.
Speed
Yeah.
Force. Yep.
That movie Superman, where he flies around the earth and gets it spinning backwards, and somehow that's supposed to turn time backwards, and we watch it go backwards.
Watch it turn
It
back
affected gravity.
time.
Or the
That mountain went back up.
even H.G. Wells' time machine, it had that spinny disc on it where they could travel back
Hey,
in time.
that was just for aesthetics.
That was
Was that magnets?
gyroscopic. Magnetism that,
Wouldn't that create
propelled
electricity?
Oh, yeah, see?
One thing I really liked about the portrayal of that particular one is that the time machine existed in time through the entire time travel process. It was physically there.
Talking about that new movie they made in like 2000s.
And yet
Yeah.
nobody...
Guy
good one.
Pearce, it was good.
Like
man.
that one guy's like, I remember seeing you.
Yeah.
You blew up the moon. It's like,
But the thing that pisses me off is no one fucked with him.
Yeah.
100,000
The time
years,
machine
no one
was
even
just
moved him?
sitting there.
well, I mean, he put it probably in places where no one would. I mean, he's
They
a
built
smart
cities-
man. He's a scientist. He built a freaking time machine, so of course he's
No,
going to
he
hide
just had
it.
it in his workshop.
Just
Yeah.
like
They built a city around him and
Yeah.
everything, and no one,
Yeah.
not even a
I
forklift
don't
to
even
move the
care
guy
what-
out of the way.
Nobody even bothered this dude. He's just sitting there in a time machine with this same like stern expression on his face, like ah.
Yeah.
well, you're going so
Yeah.
fast through time that they can't see you. It's like if you see something fast, it's like, hey, I just flew in front of
No,
your
but the
face.
time
But
machine was there the whole
He
time.
was there the whole time.
Yeah.
He just basically slowed down
the
his
time
own
was
ages.
So
moving
he
fast.
was
Yeah.
frozen and awoke at the same age. Like to him, it was a second, but to everybody else, he's just this guy sitting in this bubble time machine. Like,
Did you see
makes
that park
all
statue? No
the
bird shit on
sense
it.
in the
the
world.
people are tossing like
That is-
fucking coins in a coffee cup.
That is an interesting aspect of that story. Is the time machine never actually changed its spot. It created that
could it? It was
time
a
separation
sled.
on itself.
Yeah.
You need like a
Which
horse to
Which
draw it.
I don't understand how nothing got built around him. If no one could see him or perceive him, yet he just happened to choose the right spot that he could travel all through time and not get. Well, he did get encased once, I think, in ice.
I think
Plot
that you're
armor.
just telling the beauty of the story. I don't think.
Plot armor.
Yeah, that's exactly
armor.
plot armor. It was just, oh, you're going to take this science for granted because I'm the first person that wrote a time travel story, and this is the way it works. And it's like, wow,
Did my story? Fuck you.
yeah. Well, it's my story. This is the way.
What are
time
those things
travel
called? Like Gorlocks or Morlocks?
Morlocks.
Morlocks.
No, Gorlocks.
Who cares?
Gorlocks and the Three Bears.
works. Zorlocks.
Yeah, they were
Gordylocks.
Morlocks from World of Warcraft.
Oh, well, I knew that was a place in my life.
Hey guys, let me bring something up as if it was my own idea. what about time jumping? What about let me tell you, I've had plenty of times where I've had fun and it seemed like 5 minutes had passed. I look at the clock. Oh my gosh, it's been like 2 hours. That was my personal experience and my statement and my thought alone. Can anybody else expunge on that?
Yes, dude. I have totally went to your house before, gotten so drunk, and then time traveled to another person's house, woke up listening to music, and then blacked out again, then woke up in an alley, and then after all the shenanigans were done, I woke up halfway home walking home in the rain. Time travel.
That's a different type of time travel.
You
That is
lived
true.
a montage.
I did.
This is the classic question of if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to observe it, does it make a sound?
Yes, time being perception.
Because whether or not you literally disappeared and reappeared 3 hours later, or someone watched you make an ass of yourself for those next 3 hours and, run around the backyard with your sister's underwear on your head, to you time traveled, and to them you didn't.
That wasn't me. I don't have a sister.
Whose were they?
Nice. Nice.
But it's like there are stories of people who have traveled from one place to another in a time that it's not physically possible to travel. Someone arrives in Paris and it's only been a half hour since they departed their previous thing, or someone disappears off the face of the earth for 30
like the
years
Bermuda
and then arrives.
See, that stuff is real time travel kind of stuff, I believe. But then, like, you're talking about, I crossed the anti-meridian, and now time is different. I time traveled. No, if you drive from, Chicago to Louisville, guess what? That's just time zones.
No, that's time traveling. I don't care what you say. My cell phone is wired into all the time. It says I'm an hour ahead. That means I am an hour older than I was.
Yeah, but then when you leave,
An hour
you're
ago.
losing an hour.
Yeah, that means
see,
I'm younger.
so-
That's backwards time travel.
So you... No, it's like, I'm going to drive the opposite way of the sun
I
forever.
always thought it'd be cool if you could actually travel around the Earth and it always be daytime. If you can travel fast
If you can travel fast enough. Well, if you...
Well, without
if you're-
the hindrance of...
Yeah, just-
If you're
travel
close enough to
topography.
one of the poles, you should be able to.
See, I think that'd be cool someday.
Oh, that's... Yeah.
And it would seem like day all the time, but that's not necessarily
rough.
time travel.
That'd
That's
be-
just perceived.
No,
to
I
make
was
it
just
hard
saying
to
it'd be
do.
cool to, like, especially around the equator, if you were fast enough just to travel with the sun, never see night for one whole 24-hour set.
Like the
Oh,
exaggerated
dude, you can go to
of
Alaska
80 days around the
and
world.
have 24 hours.
Equator.
Oh, wow.
That's what I want.
An exaggerated version of Around the World in 80 Days, where they traveled around and they gained a day because they traveled with the sun. Where it wasn't time travel, but
Again, another
Yeah, but if
fictional
somebody
story.
blood tested them and, like, checked them, they would be like, oh, yes, you're exactly this many days old.
You can actually blood test if you time traveled.
I suppose so. You can track
Carbon dating.
No. Through DNA decay and everything. When you can age a person through DNA decay, and you would know if they've aged at the same rate.
As a day?
They've noticed, well, a day is hard. But like,
we're talking
in
about
space,
something we
people
think
have
is
been-
impossible.
People have been in space for like months, and then they've noticed less of a cellular decay.
That's because they're not moving around as much. The cells aren't working as hard.
No, it's because of a lack of gravity, which goes right back into something Poto was trying to say earlier. And how
What were you trying to say?
gravity can...
I have a question. If we have all experienced in our lives proof, fact, for ourselves that time is relative, we've had those experiences, why did we all agree to get paid by the hour?
Because you work
And agreed
you get paid
on
for
that
the
time.
that you work.
Because
Well,
that's
if we
not time
didn't,
travel
they
at
would
all.
make us work
Some
for
days-
free.
Okay, that's time travel, guys. Some days at work, man, it feels like I'm working for like a week, and then I'm like, oh, it's only been an hour.
I have
Relativity.
a serious answer for that.
Okay, what is it?
Time flies when
Time,
you're having fun.
the concept of time itself, we put together as mankind because we needed a way to coordinate our efforts, whether apart or together. And so when we base that on our solar cycle through, sunrise, sunset, through the years and everything, we are basing our time measurements and increments off of our planet's path, basically around the sun, because that is the one observable phenomenon by absolutely everyone, and it is unifying. And so when we developed that we've got these minutes and seconds and hours and years, regardless of how things are relative, it's the one thing people can agree on as a constant for all of our intents and purposes. And so we get paid by the hour because getting paid by the minute is silly and people on salary are dicks.
I have to disagree with you on your solar time
I get paid by salary.
because a solar calendar is 100% different than a lunar calendar.
That is true. However, the lunar calendar indirectly is based off of the solar calendar in so much as the phases of the moon are reserved by the albedo of the moon reflecting sunlight onto it.
Exactly, but it's still a lunar calendar. It's got more days. It's got more cycles than just one.
It has the same hours.
No,
I think we should have metric time. 10 hours a day, 100 minutes an hour.
Is that a thing?
No, but it should be. It would make so much more sense.
Yeah,
Oh my
actually,
God.
it'd be very easy to.
Yeah, but then that adds another 40 minutes to your hourly wage, so you would be still getting paid the same amount, but working 40 more
You have
minutes.
to adjust your money.
They ain't
Well,
gonna
it wouldn't
adjust
be
no
called
money.
an hour.
Time's
He
relative.
just said 100 minutes per hour.
Right. Well, I mean,
Well, he meant it.
it's metric.
in that
We need
scale.
new names.
That falafel. Yeah.
I'm just saying, the rich, the people that own businesses will still be like, well, we call them an hour now, so you're getting paid $7.25 for.
Actually, you'd get paid by the day, and an hour would be 0.1 days, and a minute would be 0.01 days.
That's paid time off.
Now we're just getting silly.
Other than that, like I just think that with that time prospect, that people have made different times throughout history, like the Julian calendar, Gregorian calendar, and who knows? I don't know the exact names of the ones before that. But then you had the people that worship the sun, who went by a different calendar than the people that worship the moon.
Well, is there a difference? The calendars obviously record the dates and the months and the progression on a grand scale differently, but wouldn't each one of those still recognize a day as a day? That would still be a constant. Everyone knows the sun comes up and the sun goes down.
Yeah, but then they also have to take into account that there's actually a day added or lost
but that's
at
not
the end of the year.
But that's not time travel. That's not saying that day doesn't exist. That's just when do we start our numbers over?
Yeah, that's not necessarily true.
Well, I didn't say that it was like didn't exist. I'm just saying they had to figure out like we only gained 0.3 of this day, so we have to wait till the next year to get another 0.3, and then next year that's why we have leap year.
Right, but that doesn't factor into why would an hourly wage exist? Why do we have hours?
Well, I wasn't
and
talking
minutes?
about. I was done with that conversation.
No, that's what you joined in with.
I was just talking. I'm just talking. Like this what this podcast is about. Ideas, notions, and what you think about these crazy ideas and
Yeah.
notions.
Keeping the unexplainable unexplained, but thoroughly battered.
I don't know. I'm just saying time travel is something that's kind of iffy for me anyways, just because like there's so many, it's just like a werewolf story, let's just say. Everybody has their own lore about a werewolf, so everything can be different. So your view of time travel could be completely different from my view of time travel. And you know what I mean? It's just so hard to nail down
That's
specific.
true. Well, that's why we're raiding the Fringe. Like any good raid, you go in, you burn the shit, and rape a couple people, and then you're on your way.
We do not
test
condone
out
rape.
the samples.
We do not condone rape.
No, we do not condone. I said grape.
I didn't say that.
I'm going to
Blow
grape
your
you.
grape whistle.
I said that I like to taste samples, so that's all I said.
And why
Shut
did
up,
he give
don't
you
make
a
a
grape
fat joke.
whistle?
So
What? I didn't know it wasn't. God, you are self-conscious. I was just gonna be like, that was a good point. Don't make a fat joke.
That was a good point, Chris. You called me fat.
I don't necessarily believe that time travel is physically possible at this point. I don't even think it's really happened other than the unilateral movement through time. But every one of these theories, I have so much fun exploring.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
poking holes in all of them, because I don't think a single one of them out there has been thought through all the way to the end. And when you're enjoying a movie or a book that involves these stories, you have to have a certain amount of suspension of disbelief. You have to let go and just enjoy it.
Well, and personally, I do subscribe to the belief that it is infinite. I mean, things are infinite, and they are the way they are. So, if time travel were possible, you would go back in the past to do something that happened in your past. Therefore, it is inevitable. There's no changing it. It is a continuous cycle, and it will always happen. No matter what kind of safeguards you have to anything going wrong, it will always be wrong in the same point every time, and that is just the way it is.
I think time is set in one direction, and we all time travel every day. So just enjoy it.
Just enjoy it. Words from Poda and none other. We want to thank you guys for joining us on another episode, and with me as always is Poda, Nep, and Dr. Lee, and I'm Ostinius. Thanks for joining us on another Rating the Fringe.
We'll see you another time.